¿Qué tal amigos? Bienvenidos a un nuevo video en el canal. Encantado de estar aquí con ustedes una vez más y agradecido de que ustedes me puedan acompañar nuevamente. Y bueno, ya están aquí con nosotros las consecuencias de lo que es esta tremenda guerra comercial por parte del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, por parte del presidente Donald Trump, y especialmente no vamos a hablar con una guerra comercial con el mundo, sino de esta guerra comercial contra los chinos, que la verdad es de que todos sabíamos que iba a terminar pues mala cosa. Era un juego que China siempre está dispuesto a jugar, así que bueno, vamos a ver las consecuencias de esto y ya saben, vamos a opinar sobre esta noticia y vamos con las imágenes. Adelante.
As U.S. stocks seem to be snapping back from yesterday's steep sell off in the ongoing climate of fear and uncertainty surrounding President Trump's trade war. The Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq all sharply higher at the closing bell just moments ago. You can see it there. It erased much of Monday's losses. The markets were responding in part to new remarks from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Sources telling CNN that Bessent told investors the trade war with China is unsustainable and he expects a de-escalation soon. This, as the White House just claimed they're making new progress in trade negotiations with Beijing.
We're doing very well in respect to a potential trade deal with China. As I mentioned, there have now been 18 proposals in more than 100 countries around the world who are wanting to make a deal with the United States of America. And the president and the administration are setting the stage for a deal with China. So we feel everyone involved wants to see a trade deal happen, and the ball is moving in the right direction.
So those remarks from the podium coming on the heels of yet another warning about the potential impact of the president's unprecedented trade war. The International Monetary Fund now describing the barrage of U.S. tariffs and countermeasures as a, quote, major negative shock to growth in the global economy. The IMF forecasting U.S. economic growth will slow to 1.8% this year, sharply down from its pre-tariff estimate in January.
Bien, vamos a hacer aquí una pequeña pausa. La verdad es de que aquí la señorita nos está dando datos muy interesantes. Hay un decrecimiento del 1.8%. Te está diciendo, bueno, lo que quiero llegar con todo esto es de que hubo avisos y hubo muchos en los que a ti te dijeron que esto iba a estar teniendo unas consecuencias sumamente negativas para tu país, sobre todo para tu país cuando tú eres el que está moviendo, pues metafóricamente tú estás moviendo el gallinero, lo estás alborotando y la verdad es de que pues te están dando estos datos, te está diciendo el secretario del Departamento del Tesoro que esta guerra contra China es completamente insostenible. Lo habíamos dicho aquí hace unos videos que sinceramente no sabíamos hasta dónde podía ser capaz los Estados Unidos de estirar la liga sobre este tema, porque seamos sinceros, esto no es un tema económico, esto es una cuestión de ego, y esto es sumamente peligroso porque ya lo vimos en otros videos, si no pueden checarlos, donde el turismo está sumamente en declive por este tipo de situaciones. Mucha gente se siente atacada, mucha gente está siendo dañada por este tipo de tontas políticas. Y bueno, te lo está diciendo el secretario del Departamento del Tesoro, te lo está diciendo el Fondo Monetario Internacional. Así que bueno, alertas ya hubo y muchas. Así que bueno, sigamos con el video.
Let's get straight to CNN's Jeff Zeleny, who is at the White House. Jeff, what are we learning from the White House here? Because obviously today in the markets, a better day than yesterday. But quite frankly, we have seen, you and I have talked many a time, many a day in the last couple of weeks here at 4 p.m. with exactly this kind of swing back and forth as these questions about the pillars, the American-backed pillars of the financial system, potentially weakening in the face of this. I mean, what are you hearing from Trump administration officials right now?
Well, Casey, one thing is clear. The role of the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, all along has been to calm the markets. That's what we saw again earlier today, as you just mentioned. And the president did not weigh in at all today. He may, coming up this hour, we shall see. But when the markets were open, the president did not weigh in at all. He did not talk about the chairman of the Federal Reserve as he did yesterday. Of course, he called him a major loser. He called on him to lower interest rates, and the market reacted negatively all day long. The president has been utterly silent on the markets, utterly silent on the Federal Reserve, even as the White House, as the press secretary said today, believes that they still believe that Jerome Powell has some work to do. Let's listen.
Bueno, tal cual, antes de seguir con el video, pues claro, nos está diciendo que el presidente Donald Trump está sumamente silencioso y cómo no, parece que la Casa Blanca o el gabinete se dio cuenta de que este tipo de cosas no iban a llegar a buen puerto, no iban a llegar a un buen destino y prácticamente le están diciendo, compadre, en esta ocasión vas a tener que callarte porque nos estás haciendo todo un problema al país y pues digamos que los chinos no mordieron el anzuelo, eh, quisieron jugar este juego y realmente ese no era el plan. El plan era solamente asustarlos y pues no, los asustados fueron los estadounidenses. Así que bueno, con el video.
I think the president has made his position on the Fed and on Powell quite clear. The president believes that they have been making moves and taking action in the name of politics rather in the name of what's right for the American economy. The president has the right to express his displeasure with the Fed, and he has the right to say he believes interest rates should be lower.
So the president has the right to express his displeasure with the Fed. Of course he does, but he did not do that today, and the market did not go down. So perhaps there was a correlation to that. We shall see. But I think the thing that the White House is pointing to are these potential deals that are coming up. They say they're close to negotiating deals about with 18 different countries or so. We shall see how that plays out. You'll remember that Peter Navarro said they can do 90 deals in 90 days.
I
that
do recall.
Sounded ambitious at the time. So look, July 8th is that date that's circled on the calendar when this a pause on these tariffs is supposed to be lifted. So we shall see how the progress goes. But for today, at least, the market seemed to react okay to the White House, largely because the president said nothing at all. Casey?
I was going to say, this is one.
Bueno, antes de continuar, pues bueno, lo estamos viendo tal cual como China le da una nueva oportunidad a los Estados Unidos. Les dijeron de buena manera, reconsidera lo que estás haciendo, te estamos dando la oportunidad de que la gente en general no salga lastimada con todo este tema. ¿Y cuál fue la posición de los Estados Unidos? No, 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 no y no. Pues bueno, como dicen por ahí en internet, tenga señora, pues ahí está lo que ellos estaban buscando. Los chinos entraron a ese juego y aquí es donde Donald Trump pierde una nueva batalla, la verdad de no sé cuántas que ha estado perdiendo a lo largo de lo que ha estado en este segundo mandato. Y bueno, la verdad es de que es pues triste que estemos presenciando prácticamente el previo del inicio del fin de los Estados Unidos. Así que bueno, sigamos con el video y lo seguimos comentando.
One of those rare times when we see the president, speak so freely in public, so aggressively in public. Normally, there aren't necessarily immediate consequences for that speech, but there sure are in the markets when he's talking about Jerome Powell. Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much for that reporting, and we may have some news at the White House, so we'll come back to Jeff if we do throughout this hour. But our panel does join us now. CNN contributor, New York Times journalist, podcast host Lulu Garcia Navarro, journalist, author of The Red Letter on Substack, Tara Palmieri, Democratic strategist Adrian Elrod, and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings. Everyone is with us. Thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. Tara Palmieri, I kind of want to start big picture on Trump and how he has these personal vendettas, right, in many areas of his political life, presumably his personal life as well. But in this case, his political life, And normally, in recent years, he has been able to win essentially all of them, right?
Yeah.
He takes on someone, whether it's firing somebody in his own orbit. Obviously, he won re-election against Joe Biden. This situation with Jerome Powell seems to be distinctly different in that there are immediate repercussions for him in the markets. Do you read into anything into the fact that we didn't hear from him on that today?
I think it's really interesting. So Jerome Powell is a tough one to touch, right? Like during the first administration, he was constantly bullying him on Twitter as well. He would say, you have to lower the interest rates, you have to lower the interest rates. And that was one of his fights, but he never went so far as to fire him, even though he threatened to. It was kind of like Mueller. With Robert Mueller, he kept saying, it's a witch hunt, we're going to get rid of the special counsel, but he never actually did it. And so maybe that he realizes there's a red line. The red line is an economic meltdown, and firing Jerome Powell would lead to that. And I think he's aware. And it's so if he's playing bad cop, and Scott Bessent is playing good cop out there and trying to calm the markets, I think he is aware that there is a balance here. There is a dance. Even if he's dancing wildly, he has to have some restraints when it comes to the U.S. economy.
Scott Jennings, how do you see this? Because there are, in fact, let's play a little bit of what we heard recently from the Goldman CEO, David Solomon. He was asked if it was a candid question. He didn't quite answer it in a straightforward way, but it's basically, hey, is the business community kind of wishing for the days of Joe Biden just because it came with a little bit more certainty? Watch.
Do you know any CEOs that say they miss the Biden administration in terms of their approach to business?
I think, Joe, what I'm hearing from CEOs, from clients that I'm talking to, is they want to understand, they want to have more certainty with respect to what the policy is going to look like. This level of uncertainty is not good, it's not healthy, and it's affecting investment spending and planning, and that will have an effect on growth in the economy, and we will see that, in my opinion, relatively quickly if we can't get to a higher level of certainty around this trade policy.
Is that a message you think the White House should take on board more aggressively?
Bien, antes de ya vamos a entrar en el cierre del video. La verdad es que me gustaría comentar aquí este tema de que es obvio lo que le estaban preguntando hace un momento a un panelista, de qué necesitaban, si extrañaban por parte de algunas cosas del gobierno de Joe Biden. La verdad es que también creo que es una opinión pues muy general, me parece que en los Estados Unidos, de que necesitan certeza, necesitan certidumbre de qué es lo que va a pasar políticamente, económicamente, socialmente y cualquier rubro, qué va a pasar con el país. O sea, se están dando cuenta que de la gente que se quejaba con Joe Biden, obviamente tienen la inquietud y una inquietud natural de querer progresar como cualquier persona, de querer estar en una mejor pues posición, por llamarlo de alguna manera. Obviamente buscaron una opción en Donald Trump, pero el sentimiento general que yo percibo de los estadounidenses es de que se está viviendo, que están totalmente perdidos, y la verdad es de que, caray, o sea, es de llamar la atención de y cómo no, la verdad es, cómo no te vas a sentir más perdido si tú sientes que no se están dando resultados, que estás viendo que este señor se está peleando con medio mundo, que la inflación se está disparando, que el poder adquisitivo cada vez es menos, hay protestas por todo el país, China te está poniendo el pie en el cuello, dices, pues obviamente claro que tú te vas a poner a replantearte pues bastantes cosas.
Well, of course, but it sounds to me like they are. I mean, listen to what the administration said today. They've got all these trade agreements that are lining up right now. It sounds like India and Japan are on deck. It sounds like even the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is talking about getting something done with China here separately from all the other allies that we're dealing with. So it feels like the administration is moving towards a situation where they're going to be able to argue that the president's strong posture on tariffs brought people to the table, created more fair trade agreements, and put the American worker in a better position. That's my hope. I think if that's where they go, the markets will respond to that. And then hopefully the president will get the second half of his economic package, which has got to come from the Congress, who still needs to make the tax cuts permanent, do the energy changes, and so on and so forth.
Lulu Garcia-Navarro, how do you see this big picture? Because, again, one of the things, first of all, one of the things that prompted them to reverse course on some of these tariffs were the bond markets, right? Treasury yields, which, again, obviously these are terms that people don't necessarily throw around every day, but it's the United States dollar being the reserve currency for the world. It's being the safest place for people to park money, and now questions about whether or not that's going to continue to be the case. How big of a risk do you think that is going forward?
I think it's a really big risk. I mean, you're seeing the gold markets. Gold is obviously something that people put their money in when they're concerned about volatility. And so at this point, what you're hearing from the business community, what you're seeing from the international community, all the signals are the same, which is like, what are you up to and what does it mean? I think the administration is trying to calm the waters. This hasn't been good for them. I agree with Scott. I also think, though, we don't know what these trade agreements are going to look like. Are these trade agreements that are actually going to have tangible benefits for American workers and for the U.S. economy as they promised? Or are these trade agreements in name only, where they're just sort of rearranging the decks? We really have no transparency into what is actually taking place here. And so amidst all of this, people in small businesses, people in medium-sized businesses, and people in large businesses are trying to figure out how they can actually, meet payroll, go ahead and order things from outside of this country, try and hire. This is all a lot of uncertainty, and what I am seeing and hearing is people are sort of pulling back and adopting a wait-and-see attitude, which is not good for the economy.
Claro, o sea, tal cual están diciendo, este tipo de situaciones pues generan muchísimo tema, muchísima polémica, muchísima incertidumbre, y eso es lo que menos quieren los ciudadanos, sobre todo la gente que está intentando, pues sobre todo tener un poco de ese pastel llamado calidad de vida, y si tú les quitas esa pequeña porción que le toca a esa persona, pues la verdad es de que se tienen que ellos replantear, así que pues varias cosas. En fin, señores, hasta aquí el video. La verdad me ha encantado estar aquí con todos ustedes. Se pueden suscribir, es totalmente gratis. Y bueno, nos vemos en la siguiente y les mando un abrazo. Bye bye.